in that climate.
Yeah.
Stuff, so
And again, the majority of our kids are here because of COVID, and we know that.
Right.
So, you know, we did the best we could with some of our, like the events that we did have, but, you know, the kids who are staying, we've got about 800. Those are the kids who want to be in this environment. So I think next year it'll be even easier for us to really kind of build that engagement piece. And, you know, again, those events around, you know, those kids that want to be here and those families.
So pretty much you're getting those kids who would want to be homeschooled or something like that anyway, but you're just capitalizing on it.
Yes, which is good. So we're keeping it. It's K-8. We're keeping our virtual school, and we are a school by itself. Like our kids who are here actually have to be transferred back to their home schools, like even in Power School and everything. So that's kind of how we set it up.
Okay, gotcha. Cool deal.
So it's been good though.
But you keep the scores and things like that though, right?
The scores, like
up for the students.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We do.
Gotcha.
Yes, we have so obviously we have no EVOS or anything like that. Just because we didn't have any testing at all last year, any, you know, EOGs or anything like that. So, you know, all of our stuff will really come this year from this information.
Right. What a wonderful year to have your EVOS scores.
I know, right? I guess we can only go up, right? I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So that's positive. And we have to do all of, you know, testing in person.
Right.
So our kids have been virtual all year in this environment, and now we have to move them all into all across the county, the elementary, middle schools on our Wednesdays that we have off, because Wednesdays are e-learning. So Wednesdays in May are all for Summit students to test.
Nice. Nice.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Maraglia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this evening?
I'm just absolutely wonderful.
Just peachy.
Just peachy keen. I'm so glad you got your stuff straight.
What are they telling you guys about testing?
I mean, we're testing. That's it. We have 5-day window right out there at the end of the year, and we're testing. And they've not given. We had some students who did not show for their exams first semester, and so we, you know, gave them an IP. And I don't know what that deadline is in June for them to finish their end of course testing, but yeah, so we're testing. Hold on, they got to come face to face.
But we got 3 religious holidays in our testing window, so that really makes it fun.
Oh boy!
So our first test date is like May the 28th, and then June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then we graduate on the 5th.
See, we're done May 28th this year. And we can start testing on the 12th. But like I said, 3 of those days are religious holidays.
Yeah, so our students will be done on the 28th, but testing will start on 29th. And for us in the high school this year, they only have to test CTE and of course testing. So that's it. So we're not doing, you know, of course, because the NCFEs are gone. So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So
how are you, Dr. Lamb?
I'm excited
all
to be here.
Vaccinated now?
I'm good. Just kind of busy time, but I guess that, you know, keeps me from loafing and doing things like sleeping. It's been kind of busy lately, but that's all right. I'm working a little bit, but I don't know. It's I think Zoom has made it too easy to meet. Now, you know, I've told you before, I freely acknowledge I've been married to a curriculum instruction specialist for 36 years, and I love her dearly. But it's not a good idea to ever put curriculum people in charge of anything, because they think that the work of the organization is to have a meeting, not understanding that you have a meeting to go and plan and then go do your work. And so I've never in my life seen as many meetings. I mean, I could literally be in a meeting. I've had, how many have I been in today? I've been in 4 today already.
I get it.
I've been in 4 today already, and I have such a natural aversion to meetings anyway. But you know, we don't seem to understand the purpose of meetings, and so we're having too many. It's just one right after the other. It's come to the point where I've got, I think, let's see how many I got scheduled for tomorrow. I've got 3 tomorrow that I know of already, and then there could be others that pop up. And so, I mean, but that's every day now. We spend all of our time having meetings and doing the same things over and over.
Well, I've got high school transition meetings all day tomorrow and Friday, so I'm looking forward to that.
So I'm doing my PD, my last one of the series for Thomasville City tomorrow. I'm doing a PD on PD tomorrow. Matter of fact, how to build a professional development plan. So this will be the final in that series that I've done for their APs this spring. But I've enjoyed that. I've had a good time working with them. They've been good. I've done some topics. Rachel said she had 6 meetings today, jumping from one to the next. Yeah. But one of the, I guess maybe my biggest complaint about meetings is because we have so many now, and because they're virtual, people don't seem to be as prepared as they should be for the meetings. They show up and then start hunting their stuff. Kind of like Henry McGinnis when I was in high school chemistry. Henry was the McGinnis brothers had a softball team. They were all brothers, but I don't know what happened. But Henry was the last of the, I think he was number 11. And his parents were obviously elderly. He was about 10 years younger than the rest of them. They had a softball team. They had a roofing company, McGinnis Brothers Roofing, but Henry was the youngest. And the DNA had run out. The pool was shallow by the time Henry came along. And I never will forget, Henry turned his gas on his Bunsen burner in chem lab one day, and then started looking for his striker. And as I stood back after about a minute, I said, "Here, use mine." And the fireball burnt the whole top out of the chem lab. But that's kind of what we do now. We call a meeting, and then once the meeting starts, we start trying to put our materials together. I was in one like that this afternoon. I was like,
I hope you see there that we're not doing that tonight. I hope you see that we got it together.
Yeah, y'all are planned and prepared. We better get started. Welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody being with us tonight. I'm looking on the screen, and so did we lose Rachel? She was.
No, I'm here.
You're still here? Oh, there you
I'm
are.
here.
Rachel's iPhone. All right.
Sorry.
These are coming and going. I just want to make sure everybody's in before we start. Well, welcome back to Mels 603. I hope you had a good break last week, had a good Easter, and got to spend some time with your family. A lot of you worked and sent a lot of work in, so we're doing well. Just be mindful that we've only got 3 more weeks after tonight. That takes us all the way through May 5th. So we're in good shape with your work. So I want to go ahead and look at our weekly schedule and kind of remind us where we are. Let me share my screen before we get to Drs. Caton and Maraglia for the lesson tonight. Let me get that out.
To an immigration lawyer and said they would deport him.
Okay, I've muted everybody. All right, so here we are in week 14, Zoom session 12. We're going to do facilities tonight with Dr. Caton and Dr. Maraglia. They've got a really good lesson planned for you. Check your email. I sent you a link through Blackboard email with the Google Doc link for their presentation tonight, or at least part of it. I also have that pulled up if we need to look at that. Dr. Caton, Dr. Maraglia, I pulled up all the things. Now, if you want to share your screen, that would be wonderful. Or we can do it either way. But they've got those. So tonight we're going to talk about facilities. Next week we're going to talk about finance, budgeting. And so to get you ready for that, this week you were to interview, or this week being prepared for next week's finance class, interview an administrator about fundraising, list the 5 most important steps in the school-based budgeting process. Again, that's interviewing a school administrator to do that, and then locate a copy of your school's budget. Does it have all of those things delineated? Your federal, state, local, and school funds. What, if anything, is missing? You need to do those in preparation for our meeting next week. There is a document that you probably may pay close attention to. If you haven't already done these 3 activities, there is a document under next week, under week Zoom session 13. There is a document that says school budget laws. Let me find it right quick. Budget laws, school budget laws. You might want to review that. I have all the North Carolina laws in here, and then I have an example of the kind of policies that you would see in your district, and one of them speaks to fundraising. And so you probably want to look at that document before if you've not done those activities. It would be helpful to look at this document when you talk to people about budget, because of the laws, and then your fundraising and your local law and policy in your district about how to handle money, about budget, those kinds of things. So that's just a reminder. That's where we'll be next week. We'll be talking about budgets and finance. So I'll go ahead and close that. The takeaway on fundraising and what you might want to make sure that you highlight is, regardless of who does it, you're responsible for it as the principal, period. You can delegate the activity and not the responsibility. So that's kind of what you're going to talk to your principal about. Some of you have already done this, and they talk about, we turn it over to the PTA or the PTO or the booster club. Well, you can do that. You can let them do the work, but if the money gets gone, they'll come in after you. So you need to understand that. And so those are the things that those budget laws will give you some outline as to what you should talk to these folks about. Then after that, the following, so this is your 2-week notice, our final case study. You should be getting started on it this week. Our 4th and final case study comes up the week after that. And then our last week, we'll do sexual harassment, and we'll catch up anything. That shouldn't take that long. This is kind of the general session. If anything we've missed, things to go over. For those of you, I went over the cap right before the break. I'll go over the cap again next week, because that kind of falls with the pacing. Everybody should finish up this week, should finish up the skip, and be ready to go to the cap next week. I will recover the cap again next week, and then the week after that is the case study, and then the week after that we kind of end up with sexual harassment, because it is such a big issue again now, and any other thing that we can think of for that last week. So that's kind of where we are. Make sure you're getting your work in, follow through on your skip and your cap. I mean, in your OMA, go back and check and make sure you've put everything in your assignment drop boxes. I know you've done them all, but make sure so you can get your points. And I think we'll be good. So everybody seems to be doing well. Blessings for our couple who had health issues this semester. Both of them are doing better. So prayers again for Cassandra and for Dominique. They're doing well, or I hope they are. They were doing well, and so we're glad to see them doing well again. So that's all I have tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Maraglia and Dr. Caton. If y'all want to share your screen, feel free. If not, I'll pull up anything that you need me to pull up.
I think I should be able to share from here, but if I have a difficulty, I will let you know.
All right, I'll stop my share, and I will turn my camera off for a minute. And that generally helps you to be able to share your screen. I can make you the host if it won't let you share. I have it set up where you don't have to be the host to share.
I believe that I will be able to do that. when I get to the point of wanting to share a few different documents with everyone. And good evening. I know I haven't seen you guys for a couple of weeks. We've had football in April, which has been a really unique situation, but it's great to be back with you tonight. And I do want to take a few minutes to talk with you about facilities, because I know that as administrators, you're very caught up with instruction and behavior and finance, but facilities is absolutely another area that you need to feel comfortable with and that you need to build up your foundational knowledge. I'm going to start talking more at a district level and then bring it down to a building level. I want to give you just a global overview. If you looked in your resources this week for our Zoom session, you saw a lot of different informational pieces that talked about capital funding and facilities, and want to make sure that everyone understands that school districts are responsible for capital funding for building, renovating, maintaining the school buildings. That is their responsibility. And in my district, which is Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, and it may be that way with some of you, we have a building services division, and there is a section that is devoted to building and construction. They handle the money with the bond packages. The last bond that passed in CMS was in 2017, and the school board votes and prioritizes their projects for the bonds. And within that department, you have a variety of different areas. You've got architecture, campus planning and design, real estate, different people that are having to handle different areas of that. Because again, you're building new buildings, you may be renovating, or you're bringing schools up to ADA compliance, looking at energy needs. But that's really from a global perspective. Unless you start working at the district level, you're not going to be quite as involved with that. When I was an intern, I did get the opportunity to be paired with a principal who was getting a new building. And so I got the opportunity to sit with him as they were working with the facilities department for the planning and blueprints, even things down to like picking the office furniture. But that was a very unique situation. That's not something that you are typically going to be involved in. In my years as an actual administrator, I've not had that situation. But just to be aware that you have people that are handling these different avenues for you, and it's really handled at a district level. Now with maintenance, that definitely is going to be more of getting down into your building level. But again, in CMS, we have a building services department that you work with, and you work with your building services manager to look at different things that are in your building that may be causing difficulties. And one of the things that I wanted to show you as you get into your building and you get more local is your assessment inventory. And this is also in your Zoom resources. And this can help you not only to look at the condition of your building and how things are working, but it also can help you as you're working with your building services manager if you need to put in reports for and work orders for things that need to be fixed in your building, or if you see that you need to work to improve things. And I'd like to look at some of these different areas. And if I remember correctly, that was one of the things that you were supposed to do before this week, is to do a facilities walkthrough using this assessment inventory. So I hope everyone is familiar with it, and I hope you had a chance to do that. And I'm kind of curious if anyone has anything they want to share that they noticed as they were going through and looking at their assessment inventory. This is required for school administrators to do this, and you are required to check your building at least twice a month, just for operational purposes, safety purposes, things of that nature. Did anyone notice anything in particular as you were conducting this assessment inventory? Anything that you might want to share from your own experience?
At my school, we had a couple of doors that would not shut and latch. There was some issues with the flooring, and my administrator had told me that it had been turned into, oh goodness, I'm sorry. It had been turned into maintenance at least 5 times, but it still hadn't been taken care of. But so there were a couple of doors that just wouldn't latch due to like I guess a metal plating at the bottom of the floor.
Mm-hmm. And I have had similar situations, and I've also had situations where things were not getting fixed, and sometimes you have to remind the people in building services that this is a safety issue, that you could have an intruder get into your building and it really makes it a serious situation. And sometimes if you get a little dramatic about it, that might get them to come out and be a little bit more responsive in what your needs are. Anyone else?
I think the biggest thing, that I kind of noticed, and I put this in my reflection, is, technology is great, and moving to all of these different things is great. But, I don't know about anyone else's, but our school system uses Wi-Fi phone system. And so you can, just call, like dial an extension. It can go to anywhere, in the county if you dial the right numbers and everything instead of a full number. But if your internet and everything goes out, and same thing with intercoms, it's Wi-Fi system. So if it goes out and your internet and anything is down, there's no way to alert anyone if there's an intruder in the building or any of those things. So they have to think about a way kind of around those things if that were to happen. So that was just something that the principal that I actually did the building check with was kind of saying is that's a concern for her, but there's not really a solution.
Right. And you do find situations like that. And one thing that I want to point out, something that we tend to have to continually look at is traffic control. Because where I am, we have a neighborhood street that goes through campus. And so especially in the morning during drop off and in the afternoon during pickup, it can get kind of tricky. And one thing that I've had to learn as an administrator is it's okay if you have to make changes in your plan, but you have to continually assess so that you know if something's working or it's not working. And you can't always rely on your staff for that. You need to take the time yourself to go out and look at what's going on. Go out during morning carpool. How's traffic flow? Is it safe? Or where the children unloading, is it safe? Are they able to stay out of traffic? Where your buses are coming in? We have a problem with our buses and our cars causing traffic jams, and it not only is a safety issue, but it also impedes the efficiency of getting our children into the building. And so we're continually having to assess that, and we do have to make tweaks. And it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a failure as an administrator. I feel like you are much more successful if you are able to see where things are not working effectively, and you're able to come up with solutions and make those changes so that you are able to have a safe building that also is facilitative to instruction. There was also the piece of surveilling outside. I'm not sure about some of you, but we do have a lot of video cameras on our campus. We use them on a daily basis, not only to maintain safety, but be able to go back and look at recordings when we have behavior incidents, just making sure that those are operational. making sure that our computer screens are operational. Again, someone just mentioned about the doors not working and having those being safe. Making sure that your teachers are not leaving doors open. I worked in a old building that had doors to the outside, and I was constantly having to remind the teachers to leave their doors closed to the outside, because it would be very easy not only for people to get in, but we also had an issue with wild animals coming into the building, and that can always be a lot of fun. Checking your fire extinguishers, making sure that those are working. Checking your bathrooms, that everything in there is functional. Another, as you're going through there, another document that I will share with you is you get fire inspections periodically, and being familiar with what those look like, but being prepared that your fire inspections are not going to come back with violations, and using this assessment inventory as a tool to help you prevent problems down the road. And that's a big key, is being able to be proactive, preventative, because I know I've heard Dr. Lamb say more than once, it's better to be proactive so you're not liable on the back end. And I think that is definitely one of the things that you need to remember as you go through. But this is a very helpful tool. And again, as I said, it is a requirement for administrators to do the assessment and to maintain the safety and integrity of their building. Any other instances that you had as you were conducting the assessment that you might want to share with the group that was eye-opening for you, or just something you didn't expect?
One of the things that one thing that I noticed that I found just kind of interesting was with all the chemicals. Normally you think about, oh, that's your custodian, they're taking care of all the chemicals, but it's just as important for you as the administrator to know what chemicals are in the building, because if your custodian's out and something happens, you also have to be aware of what's present in case of something.
And I would say right now in the time of COVID, it's even more of a concern, because there's so much sanitizer everywhere. And that's something that we've had to look at. I worked in a school where there was a lot of cooking in the classrooms and having cleaners so that they could keep things sanitary. That was an issue. Making sure that any fabrics that you have in the classroom have been treated with a fire resistant treatment. That was always something that was a big concern. And it's sometimes you feel like it doesn't matter how often you check, there's always something that seems to slip by. But I do feel like using an inventory such as this helps you keep it organized, helps you make sure you're not letting something slip through the cracks. I believe right when Brad was speaking, someone else was speaking up. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I was just saying, one of the things that shocked me, our campus is so large. So the walkthrough ended up not only being on campus, but in the parking lot. We also had to drive down the street to the stadium as well and check all the athletic fields. And one of the things that was kind of shocking to me is I did my clinical internship during football season, and there ended up being a leak in the middle of a game, and they had to call the district plumber to come fix the leak. The day that I did the walkthrough, the leak has still been going on since football season. So when we got to the football field, my principal, the county water department people, there was like a whole bunch of people out there, like they're just investigating this leak, because it's extensive amount, like millions of gallons of water, and they don't know where it's going. So that was like shocking and eye-opening as well. And just the amount of time that it takes to do this walkthrough, because just like I said, our school is so large. So that's something that you have to take into consideration when we go to different schools, like the size of the school, and making sure that you plan enough time to make sure that you can adequately cover all the grounds.
And I think that's a very interesting point, because if you're at an elementary school, you don't typically have athletic fields. You might have a playground, but you don't typically have all this involved in what you were just mentioning. And you know, you think just of your building, just your one facility where instruction's taking place, but you may have something much more extensive than just a building. You may have several buildings. Again, you may have athletic fields, where your building is located. If you're located in a more urban area, that gives you a whole different set of concerns as if you, than when if you're in a rural area. So I think that this was a really good activity for you guys to get a better handle on something beyond the four walls of a classroom or beyond the walls of your building. Because I feel like that is something that certainly for me was very much a learning curve as I transitioned from being a classroom teacher into an administrator. Anything else for the good of the group? I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the unique circumstances we faced with COVID, but anything else about the assessment inventory that anybody would like to share? Okay, I'm going to share a couple of more documents with you. As everybody is very aware, COVID has given us lots of different circumstances that we've had to prepare for. And so, you know, even though we've only been back in school since March, some of you have been dealing with it a lot longer than we have, but we've had to rethink as we bring children into the building, movement, where we're going to put them in the cafeteria, how they'll go down the hallways, sanitizing classrooms. And we've been very fortunate with our schedule because a lot of schools, I know that teachers are doing remote and in person at the same time. And we were able to develop a schedule where the teachers are only doing remote or they're only doing in person within a single class period. However, we do have to look at if you're going from in person to a remote, or if you're going from in person to in person, making sure that everything's safe for the teacher and the children as that movement is occurring. So just to share with you some of the plans that we came up with. In CMS, we started off with what we refer to as Plan B, where we had 3 rotation groups. We had an A, a B, and a C week. And so what we had to do is come up with a sanitizing schedule. And even though this is A week, it is the same for A, B, and C. You know, you have a schedule for your custodians. They know what their daily responsibilities are. But now we had to pull them into, if we've got a classroom with children in that classroom, when the period ends, they've got to get in there and they've got to be able to help sanitize that classroom. We were trying to keep the teachers from having to be as involved in that as much as possible, but some of them wanted to do their own sanitizing. And then we also had to pull in a few other folks to help out with that. But I mean, this is just a simple schedule here for each of our buildings. We have 3 different buildings and then also our gymnasium, and how we had our schedule working out. We have hour-long classes at our middle school instead of block scheduling. And the classrooms that actually would need some sanitizing either at the start or the end of a class period. And again, just a very basic schedule we had to set up, but it was something we had to think about that we've never thought about before. Again, as I said, we have a custodial cleaning schedule. And if you're not familiar with that, that might be another piece of information that you may want to speak with your principal about and take a look at. What are our custodians' responsibilities? Who's responsible for what? Because sometimes if you are still in a classroom, you don't realize what they're doing in terms of the whole school. But we had to set up a sanitizing schedule. We've also had to do something very similar to that now that when we moved back to in-person with just our 2 groups. And this is nothing fancy. This is actually just something that we shared as we moved into Plan A, in-person learning. And we had to do something a little bit different for each grade level now that we have everybody there 4 days a week, that one group. And this is just something we had to do on 8th grade. And we had to get our teachers a little bit more involved with that. Again, we've never had to create a sanitizing schedule. We had to create a pattern of movement so we could maintain our social distancing in our cafeteria. And we don't necessarily have a written plan for all of this because we had so many people there to direct the children that that we relied on that as opposed to having necessarily something for, because not all of the teachers were involved, but we had people stationed throughout the hallways to show children how to walk, how to stand in line in the cafeteria, how they would, they all have to sit facing one direction. So they all have to sit on one side of the table, and we're all in there involved in helping the children with where to sit and how that works. But another piece we had to think about was making sure that the parents understood what was going to be expected of their children, because they were very nervous about this as well. So we put together some information, and you can see it here. For the return to in-person learning, it was the same. It didn't matter what your rotation was, but just some information that we shared with them. We wanted parents to understand when their students arrived at school, they were going to be screened. CMS had a screener, and their temperature was also going to be taken by a staff member. If a parent wanted to walk children in on their first day, we were going to allow that for the first day only, but we wanted parents to understand that their temperature would be taken as well and what time that would start. We wanted them to know that, just some other information, our remote schedule went from 8:45 until 12:40. And so when children started coming back in person, for those who were staying remote, their schedule changed a little bit. So just some things like that that we felt was important for parents to know so they could be more successful in helping their children be successful with their school. And again, this was something that we've not had to plan for. COVID really made things a little bit different for everyone. And these are just some things that we've had to do at the building level that I wanted to share with you that has been unique for us this year. Any questions about any of these documents? Again, nothing very extensive or fancy, just some down and dirty information that we knew that our parents needed and our staff needed so that everybody felt like they were ready to move forward with in-person instruction.
Yes, this is Tamara. We did something similar like that. I think at our professional development and staff meetings, or principal went over that. We have a shared drive document with all those information housed, and teachers can go back and make reference and so on. And we also share that with the parents, and we kind of did something too unique to make slides for the kids. So we do that in our I'm elementary, so we do that in our morning meetings. So we go over the water fountain, we go over the hallway, one-way hallway, things like that. And to be honest with you, those are things that really help the kids to be safe when they came back on campus.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. We even have some information at school that we used with videoing so that the children could see what was expected of them, because it was so different from anything that they had experienced before. And just to make them feel a little bit more prepared, and to make parents, try to help parents be as comfortable as well, because parents have been so extremely nervous throughout this whole pandemic, that just trying to help them. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Because I like hearing from you guys. I like hearing what you have to share that you've learned or experienced. Okay, I think that was everything that I wanted to share with you. You've seen some of the plans that we've had to do, some of the things that were a little bit different, that have been, even those of us with lots of experience, this has all been a new situation. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Dr. Caton? And I will check the chat in case there's any questions in there. I was not doing that as I was talking, but I'll check that now. Any other questions or comments?
All right, thank you, Dr. Maraglia.
Thank you.
Dr. Caton, we're ready for you. What you want to share, or you want me to
Sure,
share?
yeah. I can do it, I think.
All right.
So I'm going to pick up a little bit from Dr. Raglia and go over a little bit of COVID stuff that we did as well. I'm going to start from the end of the school year last year. I'm at a high school. So, we had to end the year. And so for us, ending the year for us was graduation. When we finally were able to do graduation, we had to map out our facility. So you should see a sharing of the screen, and this is our home football side. And we actually had to go and count how many seats and all that, so that you can see the purple is where people could sit. So we had to map out our whole home football stadium so we could see how many parents were able to get on the home football side. And then we also had to, and you can see right here at the bottom of the slides, it said 119 families is what we could accommodate on our home football side. And then we had to map out our visitor side. So we had to go to our visitor side as well and map them out as to where our families could sit for graduation for that. And so we had 90 families that could sit on that side. And then we had to set up our football field, and we had to have it completely mapped out. We had to say exactly where all the chairs were according to the sidelines and things like that. We even had to map out where the camera would be because it was going to be it was going to be live streamed for parents who weren't available. And so going out and measuring and mapping all that out was a big task for us. Something that you don't think of when you go to get your administrative license is that you'd have to learn how to, measure and all that kind of stuff. That's some things they don't ever tell you. So that was a big process for us for graduation. We also, I'm very by the book, kind of basic step-by-step thing. I work with great people. And so because we were virtual, we made sure that we gave this great plan to our parents as well as to our staff as to where they would be parking, staff parking, the flow of everything. So when we did have graduation, what all the checkpoints were. When families came in, these were your checkpoints. We lots of things to remember, like what people were doing. If you were a parking lot person, what even to wear, all that kind of stuff. We said make sure you have sunscreen, all that. And you can see, I'm sorry, people's exact names and what they were doing. This is what you're doing. These are who you're moving. This is what you're doing, making sure, everybody had a specific task, and we specifically mapped all that out. This was also put in a video and sent to the teachers, and also, like I said, to our graduates. And it talked about, what your duties were when you came in. As you can see, I'm just moving through them quickly. So everybody knew exactly what was expected of them. And we had to sit down because these are things that we never had thought we would have to do for graduation. Usually for us, for graduation, we get to have it at Minji's Coliseum at ECU. And so this year was the first time we had to think about that. And so you can see specific teachers' names. It tells what they had to do, all that good stuff. And so we had an exact plan. And like I said, that was something that I was never used to, having to think about you have to be you have to think about every basic little thing, and you have to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on, which I would have never thought about beforehand. I also wanted to go over, like Dr. Maraglia was saying about COVID. This was our opening plan. I'm hoping you can all see my screen. I tried to make it a little bit more fun for us when we did our opening stuff. And because I am, I guess you would say, OCD about a lot of stuff, I wanted everything to be up there for them. I put this on Facebook. I also put it on our website to let them know exactly what was going on. And you can just kind of see what we were talking about when we had to go from week A to week B, or if they're going to do face-to-face. And so I, talked about limiting our visitors. I'm just going through them all quickly. I thought I was. And like when they can be dropped off, they could be dropped off before 8:30. That was a big change for our students because usually they can be just dropped off, to stay in their vehicles until temperatures had been taken. And also the same thing for buses. We had bus monitors, and I talked about this mask. Custodial staff would be cleaning 6 feet apart. We said that restrooms may not be necessarily easily accessible because of social distancing, so make sure you take advantage of that. We also talked about breakfast and lunch would be in the classrooms. The water fountains wouldn't be available, so have water bottles. And we talked about when we would have dismissal. And then I went into other areas as well. So I wanted to make sure that my parents, as well as my staff, knew exactly what's going on. So like I said, I shared it on Facebook. It's on our website. We also went over all this on the first days of school as well, to make sure everybody knew what was going on. I talk really fast, and I apologize if I'm talking too fast. Y'all just tell me to slow down. So then you have to think about then making sure that everybody knows in your building what's going on, not only just your students. So I'm going to go through some of the things that we did in the opening day. We talked about, how to film and how to film your classes now for Zoom. We gave options for that. Golly, I'm going to, and there, let's go back. There we go. Is it going? No, I keep clicking too many buttons. All right, let's see. Okay. There we go. Keep on going. Keep going. It keeps hitting that one button for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But anyway, and then also we talked about to the staff what are some things that's going to look differently for them in regards to their actual classrooms. So we talked about, PLCs, what they're going to look like, that they needed to have them either before school or after school, or what times they would do that. So we went through everything. And then also, come on, we gave some schedules of stuff, some resources. I'm not going to go through all the MTSS stuff. I'm just going to go through that. Sorry, because this was all of our opening day things, but I wanted you to see how we talked about all the COVID stuff. Here we go. So that was our school schedule. And then we talked about what week B would look like, how we're going to have temperatures taken. There would only be 2 main entrances for teachers, the main office and the auxiliary gym. If they arrive late, they need to check in. All students will be screened. Teacher assistants will be assigned to that duty. We would have trainings for them, and expectations would be given to the teacher assistants. Actually, we did not have, our teachers had to clean the surfaces in the classroom. We didn't have custodians that would be able to do that. So our teachers had to wipe down all the surfaces. We had to have a isolation room. We had to talk about that and train people for the isolation room, tell them that the students would be eating breakfast and lunch in the classrooms, and that students and staff would have to wear masks. And if they refused to wear the mask, they wouldn't be able to be at face-to-face instruction. That they would have to walk in the same direction, and classrooms would be set up for social distancing. So what I did, just to kind of break the monotony of the whole meeting, is I actually gave everybody a 6-foot piece of string. Said, hey, if you have any questions about your desk, we've already set them up for you, but here's a 6-foot piece of string, just to kind of make things light and funny, because I always give them something. I was like, this year you're getting a piece of string, but that was just something small and funny I just did. So anyway. And then we also, like Dr. Bradley said, is that this was the training for our building entrance monitors. And we talked about what everybody would do, and that, like each one was a 3-person team, and what their expectations were for when the families or kids were dropped off at school. So that was given to them ahead of time. Any questions? Just added a little bit more to what she was talking about in regards to COVID before I move to our next section.
Dr. Caton, I just wanted to say that I really like seeing your planning for your athletic events and your graduation, because I think it's a great example. I said in the chat that it's so different when you go from level to level. At the middle school level, we didn't have athletic events this year. We won't have graduation. So we don't have to plan for things like that. whereas at your level, and also depending on your district, you do. So it just really is a great example of how things can vary. Your campuses are so varied, but it's also so varied within the levels.
Right. And you have to think about every little thing. And of course, I would sit down with my team and I'm like, what would somebody, think about when they're walking in? What do we have to make sure about? What if somebody is too hot? What if somebody is that, you have to really think about everything. And that's not something that I was used to. And I'll be very honest with you, that is not something that we got a direction from our county. And so actually, they used a lot of our stuff that we had in our county because I had such a detailed plan. And sometimes I'm over detailed, but that's okay. They need to know exactly what's going on and what's expected of them. So anyway.
But then you always find out there's one thing that you just couldn't have thought of.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly. So I'm going to also move to the teacher working conditions survey. This is one thing when you administer your teacher working conditions survey, one of the parts of it is facilities and resources. So one of the things, if you can see, this is my school level, then this is the district level, and this is the state level. And so, 59% plus 29%, whatever that is, because I'm not really good at her, is about what 70, 60, 70, 90% or so agree that they had a sufficient access to appropriate instructional materials. This was last year's teacher working condition survey because it's every other year, but our county also gives the same exact one. And the reason why that was, a little bit disagreed was because with that last year, I moved them to copy codes. They did not like that because we had gone over on our allotment money. So I had to take away from instructional money to cover our copy code money. So that was one of the big things. And also, when I look at mine, for this one, teachers have sufficient access to digital content. Only 8% disagreed. I'm not too worried about that because that's probably just one teacher. I have only 44 teachers. So when it says 8%, that's not really big. So I don't really get too worried about that for me. Same thing with instructional technology. Overall, really, really good. Have sufficient reliable communication technology, including phones, faxes, email. Good to go for that as well. And then sufficient access to equipment such as copy machine. As you can see again, that was a little bit, it was only 8% for both. So that was probably 2 people. And like I said, I know that was because I put them on copy codes. And so when you're looking at this, it talks even about professional development. And you would think that all of that, like professional development, wouldn't be in facilities, but it is. And so the thing that you would think would be in facilities is this one: the school environment is clean and well maintained. But there's so much more that goes into the facilities teacher work condition survey. Adequate space, physical environment, classrooms supports learning and teacher, and then reliability of internet. And that I can't do anything about that. And that's parts. So there's lots of parts of the teacher working condition survey that I get frustrated about, because there are parts of it that you have absolutely no control over. Like one of the questions in instruction is, I get the data in a good time from the state in regards to testing. Well, as you know, we have no control over that. That's from the state. We don't have any control over that. So overall, when I look at my teacher work condition survey for facilities, I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty good. I have really strong scores for agree and strongly agree. I don't have generally anything below 70%. So I feel really good about what my facilities looks like. And the only reason why I knew what was going on with the ones I talked about copy machines and stuff is I asked. When I take the teacher work condition survey to my school improvement team and I say, these are the lowest in this area. Why? Tell me what needs to happen. What do we need to do differently? And I have those conversations with my school improvement team and we talk about it and things that we can do to make it better. So another thing that I would like to talk about, I'm sorry, y'all, I do talk fast, Dr. Lamb, I apologize. I get excited about stuff. Is to help with our cleanliness. We have a custodial weekly checklist. That's what this looks like. This is done by our assistant principal who's over custodians and our head custodian. They go over this weekly. And so we can see what is not being done and what needs to be done differently. If the lead custodian and assistant principal does see that one of the custodians is not doing exactly what they need to do, it will result in a write-up, and they do have this documentation to support that as well. And then that leads to, with our facilities, we have a county check or inspection, cleanliness inspection. We had an overall grade of an A- for our school. So our county comes in and inspects our facilities, from our floors, as you can see, or classrooms, restrooms, dining room areas, custodial storage. And so they go through twice a year and they inspect our facility as well. So that's why the weekly inspections are important to me. Because I'll be honest with you, in our county, at the end of the year, they give just a little attaboy certificate to schools that had A's or anything like that. And that means a lot to me. It does. I want us to be a clean school. I talk about it to my custodians, because I will say that when parents walk into this building, the first thing they see is the building. And I want it to look good, and I want it to look presentable. When I drive up on my campus, I'm looking for trash. When I drive by, if I see any weeds growing up on the fences, I'm going to say, I'm going to go get them, or either I'm going to say something about it. When I go to games, I want to make sure that there's no trash or anything like that. Anytime I drive on on campus, when I walk up, I'm looking at my flower beds. Are there a lot of weeds and things like that? Because that is how you sell your school to your community. My school is right on the main highway. People are looking at that stuff all the time when they drive by. So I want it to look really nice when they come up on our building, or when they visit our building. And let me see. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is Dr. Lamb mentioned about fundraisers. What we do at our school is I do have a fundraiser approval form. This is what it looks like. It has to be turned in to myself and to our bookkeeper. I do not allow a fundraiser to happen but only 2 weeks, meaning that a club can only have one fundraiser per semester, because they have 2 different sets of students each semester. So, and they can only have it for 2 weeks. That is it. That's all I allow. And they have to turn it into me, because I do not allow any overlapping. I do not like for FFA to have a fundraiser at the same time that HOSA is having theirs as well. We have a very small school, and that's too much on parents, in my opinion. So I make sure that that's all turned in. And then it's placed on our school-wide Google Calendar, so everybody knows when certain fundraisers should be occurring and happening and things like that. But it cannot happen unless it's been approved by myself and by my bookkeeper as well. So that's a really big thing for us. The last thing I'm going to talk about goes back to COVID, and it's the whole facilities and organization of everything. And this is all of our students, and going into the students and seeing if they wanted face-to-face or online. Were they going to ride a bus? Were they both weeks? What week were they going to be on? What bus they were on? All that information. This pretty much has stopped because, now we're on plan A, so we didn't have to do it. But this was really important for us as we move through. And we had, for a time period, the students who were on wait lists. And so if you see the student on line 2, the request that they had for when they wanted to be face-to-face, what their phone number was, because we had a wait list for students who were trying to move to face-to-face. When we changed their learning zone, we put it up here. This is the date we changed it. It's been changed in this sheet, which is this, because it's our master sheet. And we also made sure it's changed in Power Schools, because that's how we did our bus route. So for us, COVID made it even more, made us to be even more organized and making sure everything was done correctly, because we had to make sure also, if you look, this is the student section. And right here, this is the room number. And then this was the capacity of the room. And so we would have to make sure if kids would come back, that the capacity of the class, this is the capacity of the classroom was not over. So we had to, sort when we would bring a new kid in, we'd have to sort this document to make sure that class could hold that student. So that's what we used, because you couldn't do that in Power School or anything like that. So we had to create a spreadsheet so that we could see if the kid, what the room numbers were, what the capacity of the classroom was, all that. And I'm gonna tell you, God, I hope I don't have to do anything like this again. But this really helped us to see, to organize it all. And we color coded, see the dark green were kids that were in both weeks, blue was week A. If they were online virtual, they were yellow, and then week B. And then if we had to, see about a certain class, we would just, filter this classroom by the period and the class and things like that, so we could see how many students were actually in that classroom. So I gave you a lot of facilities, organizational things. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? Kind of makes you tired, wants you to take a breath, right?
Dr.
Well-
Payton, we had to do something very similar, because especially with the transportation issues, and I'm sure you had to do where in Power School, children were coded differently depending on whether they were remote or in person. Even when everybody was remote, there was still one group was considered remote and one was considered in person for when we came back in person. And that made it very interesting for scheduling purposes.
Right.
But the capacity and the and looking at the transportation, just I got tired of looking at that Google spreadsheet.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you both. Very timely and relevant information about school facilities in the COVID era, which is different than it was a year ago. And hopefully it will be different in another year, but we've learned some good lessons along the way that I hope that we don't forget, especially on cleanliness and appearance of our buildings. I'm in agreement with Dr. Caton that many times the community's view of your facility is of the physical facility. They don't know what goes on in the room. They don't really know what's happening at the building. All they can see is the outward appearance. And so we need to be reminded of that. We need to be reminded that we probably need to be a lot cleaner in schools than we have been prior to the pandemic, even after the pandemic, that we could be better in terms of public health. We could do a better job with that, with our young emerging citizens, that they need to learn some of these lessons. Again, thanks to both of them tonight. I won't take your time. The only thing that I would conclude with is we're going to talk about funding next week. Again, I implore you to look at that budget laws document that I have under next week. It will make next week a lot more understandable when we get into some of those things next week. So please remember to look at that document if you have time. I don't have anything else for you tonight. We'll have our class next week, and then this is the 2-week notice to get ready for your LICE case study. I'll see you all next week. Thank you again, doctors, for your presentations tonight. Everybody have a good week.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.